Finally, the first ever SLR Jordan and I have reviewed for DPReview TV. It is the Canon EOS Rebel SL3. All right. Welcome back, DPReview TV viewers. Chris Nichols here, and yes, indeed, we are looking at the Canon EOS Rebel SL3, the latest in a line of ultra-compact SLRs from Canon. And I do want to go on record as saying that the SL2 that I previously reviewed, I had a real soft spot for that camera. I really liked how it was a novel combination of having an SLR viewfinder, but also having some more modern capabilities in live view, largely thanks to Canon's excellent dual-pixel autofocus off the screen. But now we have the SL3, and I really want to find out, what is this camera bringing to the table? We've got a lot more competition than we did back then. We have to really step up the game. Does this camera step up the game? See that? Those adorable creatures, that's the Canada goose gosling. I mean, this is a symbol of our heritage and our majesty. But now we have something else, another gosling from Canada that's far more famous. Thanks a lot, Ryan. And unlike the noble Canada goose, Ryan migrates to the States but never comes back to us. I've always enjoyed the handling on the SL cameras. You know, the SL1 was incredibly compact, but the SL2 really added a much larger, better grip. And the SL3 is almost exactly the same kind of camera dimensionally. Great comfortable grip, that same 95% pentamirror viewfinder, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Very similar controls and dials, fully rotating screen here to the side. I like, again, that we still have nice metal controls. But at the same time, I feel like the SL3 has been simplified even further. I mean, the mode dial is simplified. When you go in the menus, they're beautiful, they're easy to use, they're very accessible to a new photographer. Controls are minimal. This is very classic of any entry-level Canon. We don't have things like the ability to set a minimum shutter speed for auto ISO control. We do have some customizability with the display button, although it only gives you 5 features. I would still find that I would use the depth of field preview. There's no separate button for that on the lens mount. But I also do like that I can hold it down to temporarily brighten the screen, which is great on a bright day like today, without having to go in the menu and set the menu higher for brightness on the screen or lower afterwards. So that's a really handy feature. But otherwise, it's a very simplistic interface with very little customizability. Great for entry-level photographers, but if you want to do more with the camera, this is going to let you down. Now, I know that it sounds like I'm just mentioning a lot of the same things that the SL2 had, and that's because in this review, a lot of the same stuff is from the SL2. It's the same 24 megapixel APS-C sensor. It's not a terrible sensor. I mean, I like the image quality, and Canon, of course, always have beautiful JPEGs. But it's also the same 9-point autofocusing archaic system that you would have found through the viewfinder on the SL, SL2, and a lot of the Rebels. It hasn't changed. It's a staple for these entry-level cameras, but it's limited when you want to do things like a group or zone style focusing, or really get into some more trickier wildlife and action photography. But it's not all the same. There's one big improvement, and that's that we've now moved over to a Digic 8 processor. Now, this gives us some nice advantages with battery life. It also gives us nice advantages for autofocusing, especially on this camera. Face detect is commonplace. We don't need to talk about that anymore, but eye detect is all the rage right now, and all the companies are competing to have better, more intuitive eye detect systems. And I've previously criticized Canon cameras in the past because although they've had early eye detect systems, they always worked in a one-shot still life capability. I could focus on a person's eye, but if they lean forward or backwards, or if I change my position, I'd have to refocus on the eye again. But on the SL3, the eye detect works in full continuous servo. Picks up someone's eye as I move towards them or move away or zoom or reframe. It just constantly follows the eye and refocuses on it. It's brilliant. It's what a lot of other manufacturers are doing, and it's one of the nicest, most intuitive ways to shoot portraits. So I like that feature, and if I had to give any sort of downside, it's simply that you're going to find on this camera, I'm going to rely on the back screen, the live view capability, so much more now than I would actually want to use the SLR viewfinder. I hate to say it again, but you know what else is the same? Is the LPE17 battery. That hasn't changed either. Although we do get better efficiency with the new processor. So, you know, Canon's claiming upwards of 1,000 shots if you stick to the SLR viewfinder, which is honestly a compelling reason why you might still want to use it. Off of the screen, you're going to get roughly a third of that, so it does take a big battery hit. But as I said, this LPE17 is pretty common. It's been around for a long time, so if you have spares of those, you could happily rely on the back screen and do just fine. Okay, so enough about what's the same as the SL2. Let's talk about things that have actually been taken away for no reason. First off, big shout out to Michael the Maven for bringing this to the world's attention. You'll notice there's no center pin on the flash hot shoe. Canon EX flashes will work just fine, but this really kills a lot of third-party support for radio transmitters, other third-party flash units, older manual style flashes, and the rest. And on top of that, they've still left a little plastic circle where that should be. So I guess when I get home, I'm gonna put some silver paint in there and make my own little pin. I don't think it's a cost savings feature. That doesn't make sense. Really what would make sense is they're trying to get you locked into their system even more substantially than they already do. And I have to actually have some sympathy for Canon in this regard. I mean, SLRs are not as profitable as they used to be. Photography is not as profitable as it used to be. And on top of that, you've got companies like Yongnuo and Godox making, frankly, amazing wireless triggers and flashes for incredibly low prices. And that's also hurting Canon's margin. And it might even be pointless because it turns out that Godox is announcing that they can update their firmware on their flashes to make them work with this camera system anyways. So in the end, it's just an odd, inconvenient feature. Even though this SLR viewfinder is pretty much as bad as an SLR viewfinder can be as far as brightness and magnification and whatnot, it's still a lot of fun to use. And so all throughout today, I'm still finding that even though the screen is better in every way, shape, and form for all practical reasons, the photographic experience is still a lot of fun through the viewfinder. Do you hear that? What I'm finding is actually very commonly on this particular camera that I'm in one-shot mode, I'm autofocusing, where of course, as we always do, touch the shutter halfway, recompose, and fire. But you just heard it again there. I'm finding that there's something about the half press which is just sometimes engaging and sometimes not. So I press to focus, but when I recompose, it refocuses. There's something about my fingers just reactivating the shutter right at the moment I don't want it to do that. And so you got to get very practiced with pushing this firm enough that that's not going to be a risk, but not too firmly it's going to fire the shutter. It's a little bit more sensitive than most cameras I've used.
Vlog time. It's Jordan to talk about video recording on the Canon SL3. And I really like the SL2 for video work. You got a articulating screen so you can see yourself. You get Canon's lovely dual pixel autofocus. And that still holds true with this. We get nice Canon colors. We do have a mic jack, but no headphone jack on it. However, there was a very weird omission. Canon no longer has 24 frames per second at 1080. So the rest of our episode's at 24, so you can probably see the motion's gonna look a little herky-jerky when I put this 30p into a 24p timeline. Fortunately, headline feature, they have added 4K 24 to the SL3. Okay, I guess that's sort of better. We're at 24 now, at 4K at least, but I've got this huge crop factor when I switch over there. And as well, we moved from the dual pixel autofocus to Canon's just very basic contrast detect. For this reason, I think the 4K on this is mostly a marketing gimmick. I would stick to the 1080 modes on that. And if you're planning to do that, I'd just pick up an SL2. It also has 1080 24. But your best bet, grab yourself a Canon EOS M50, then you'll get an electronic viewfinder as well, part of the mirrorless advantage.
There's no space for me. All day today, just this weird sense of deja vu, like we've done this before.
I feel like I've shot this episode. I mean, it really just felt like doing the SL2 review all over again. Well, I mean, that was a different time. It was a different channel.
Place, a different era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you seem to enjoy shooting with the camera though.
You know, when the SL2 came out, the main reason why I really loved it so much is because it was fun. It was a novel idea.
I just think the market's changed so much in that tiny little time. I think most people looking at this class of camera are better served by, honestly, shooting with their smartphone or a mirrorless camera in this class.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the M50 has slightly better video capabilities. I think EVFs are great for people to learn. I love the kit lens on the M50 being wider than the 1855. The only thing that would really make me go here is if you're really in love with an SLR viewfinder in a small camera, or really that eye detect. The continuous eye detect is a great feature.
Yeah, I'd love to see that in the M50, but remember, Optical viewfinder, you don't have access to that.
Nope.
Great eye detect. So again, it feels like such a bipolar camera. I mean, the big thing that really bothers me with this is not only that most of the features they added, like the 4K, are pretty half-baked and not very useful, but that they took stuff away, like 1080-24 and that sync pin on the hot shoe. It's just the worst kind of market segmentation. So honestly, I would look at an SL2 if you're in love with this design, or take a look at something like the M50.
Maybe Canon will, in very un-Canon-like fashion, give us that continuous eye detect on the M50. That would be fantastic.
I'm not gonna hold my breath.
All right, thanks for joining us for this review. Don't forget, let us know your comments on Instagram and Twitter. Please subscribe to the channel and follow us. Leave your comments below and let us know if you think the SL3 has a place, or is it just a strange camera left in limbo, especially when it's the exact same price as a Canon EOS M50 kit. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us. We shall see you soon.